Dear listeners, welcome to the another episode of Reclaiming Happiness with me, Sandeep Neutron. I am really thrilled today to have a guest uh, uh, to really have him in the show. For him to come in the show, it's something like for me, the universe working together, making my dream come true. We'll talk about it in a while. Um, he I follow him in Instagram. He has more than 100K, almost 108K followers for his Instagram spiritual page, earth-based healing and technique page called the Wave and the Ocean. He's Nicholas, joining in from right now United States. Without any ado, let him welcome in the program. Warm welcome to Sir Nicholas. Since we're in Nepal, from the Himalayan nation of Nepal, the birthplace of Gautam Buddha. Sir, welcome to our program.
Thank you, Sandeep. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
My many thanks, my gratefulness and gratitude I extend to you.
Thank you,
I want to
brother.
give a little overview for our listeners how we got connected. Unlike other guests in my past episodes, all of the guests I've known them somehow, but this Nicholas here, this is a complete blessings from by technology and by the universe. I used to follow him. I still follow him on Instagram. Today I got motivated. Highly I get highly motivated by his post Instagram stories. And one day I was like surfing through the Instagram, and I saw one post where he said, "Put your intention to the universe. Write down your intention to the universe." And without me even blinking my eye, I wrote on his message if I could have him in my podcast. And he was so generous to, despite him being extremely busy, that which I could clearly see, talk to me and support what I'm doing. So that's the little backdrop for our listeners.
Yeah.
What you thought when you saw the message?
Yeah, that's a great story for me as well. Yeah, I get some nice messages from folks all over the world, and that's like really what inspires me as well, sometimes motivates me. I think we all kind of deal with ups and downs in life, and sometimes we're doing the thing and we know it's the thing we're meant to do and we're excited, and other days we have those feelings of doubt, what am I doing? Is this the right thing? I think that's a normal part of life. So I'm always inspired and motivated when people say to me, "Hey, I like what you're doing. Hey, I like your message. Hey, you've helped me out some way." And that was what it was like when I saw your message too. It was one of those moments where I was inspired by the fact that you were inspired by my posts, if that makes sense. I think we're all in this together. So the fact that you put your intention out there and it was to have me on your show, I felt honored. I felt honored to be part of your intention. And there was no way I was going to say yes, because I like to share with people and I like to discuss, with people all over the world and to connect. That's what I think we're really here for. But, it was one of those moments where I read your email and I said, well, how could I possibly say no to this, right? Someone goes out of their way and they say, my intention is to have you. And I thought, well, that's a beautiful thing. So, yeah, I was absolutely excited. And, you and I have had a little back and forth the past few months because I have been a little busy. And now that I'm here, yeah, we're making it happen. And it does seem like one of those things where the universe conspired to bring us together. And I'm very blessed to meet you, Sandeep.
Thank you, Nicholas. When we are younger, especially for me, the stories we hear sometimes in the movies. Also, I remember the book Alchemist. Who doesn't know that book?
Yeah.
Readers. I remember listening to it. It was a Nepali translation in one of the FM stations in Nepal back maybe 15, 20 years. I didn't realize it was Alchemist, but I really loved the book. I didn't even know the name of the book back then. It was an audio. The VJ, was it RJ rather, back in the days.
Okay.
He was reading the book. like
Okay.
late at night around 10 o'clock. And
Uh-huh.
fast forward 10, 12 years later, I was like, I had to read the classic. And I was reading Alchemist, and I loved that book again. And then I was reminded I had already listened to the book a long time ago.
Uh-huh.
And it's the same, ideas like this, not just ideas, the mysteryness that surrounds us.
Yeah, that
Uh, you
synchronicity,
know,
right? These divine coincidences.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we feel there is some connection, and I've never experienced it. As I'm getting a little older and as I'm practicing a little more mindfulness, I'm spotting that
Mm.
more often than I've ever in my life. Um, and this is one of the example I'll say. With that, now I'm gonna cut this conversation of how grateful I am before I bore my audiences. Let me move into right away to ask you a few questions here.
Sure.
Um, can you tell us about, because I looked at it a little bit, and I saw you are so much into earth-based healing, your spiritual journey. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey, how you
Sure.
got into this whole spirituality
Absolutely.
thing and healing practices?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's a great question in general. And for me, I'm actually intrigued by my own answer to this always, because my journey, we say that word a lot, like, when did your spiritual journey start, or did you have an time? And I can point to specific moments in my life where I have had some sort of moment where it's like, oh yeah, that's where it started. That was the moment. But I truly believe that we're all on a spiritual journey, of course, from the moment we're born until the day we die. And in a greater sense, if you believe that energy is neither created nor destroyed, and in that sense it's very real, it's a scientific concept, then I think our spiritual journey is eternal. It's infinite. It's always happening. But in my life, I think it kind of started, I was about 12 or 13 years old, and I read a book called The Art of Happiness by the Dalai Lama. And,
Mm.
I didn't start meditating the next day, but I remember reading this book and then going into the other room and telling my mother who's Greek, I have a Greek mother and an Italian father. So I was raised in like a Christian household, you could say. We weren't at church every Sunday, but I was raised in a Christian household. And I walked up to my mother and I said, Mom, I'm going to be a Buddhist now. And she was like, oh gosh,
When you were 13 years old.
yeah, it was like, that was it. Something sparked in me when
Mm-hmm.
I read that book, and that was that started this path that, like I said, I didn't turn into a Buddhist necessarily, but in my mind I started sort of like calling myself that, and I was excited by that, and so that was kind of the beginning of a long process in my life that continues to this day in some ways, of really like soaking up other cultures and religions and philosophies. I spent a lot of time, more interested, I guess I could say, in Eastern philosophy, so in Buddhism and eventually Dharma, and that's now a big part of my life. So my life can kind of be described as this like perpetual process of seeking and exploring in some way, sort of
Mm-hmm.
looking at different things outside of myself, and eventually brought me to where I am now, which is, I'm a full-time student of traditional Vedanta, and I work with my teacher, and I've been studying Sanatan Dharma for a long time and Vedanta for a long time on my own. But it was a few years ago where I realized that in order to really get what I want out of this and to go deep into it, I have to find a proper teacher, someone who's more equipped than me, to sort of explain these texts that I've been reading, and to bring me into more questioning of myself and how my personal life relates to these texts that I'm reading. I guess what I would say is, like, my journey has been, I love this phrase. They say the longest journey you'll ever take is the 18 inches from your head to your heart. And that's a beautiful phrase to me that also kind of echoes what my life experience has been. It's been a lot of
Yeah.
studying and learning and sort of philosophizing about things. But in the past maybe 6 or 7 years, I've really gotten a lot more focused on doing, on actually embodying the teachings and actually practicing, actually sitting down every day to practice meditation and sitting down to study. And really, to me, that's been the most profound change in my life. It's nice to read, it's nice to philosophize, but to really bring these things home into the heart has been powerful for me. So a few years ago, I found my Vedanta teacher who I study with. And he happens to be a foreigner, so he speaks in English. He happens to be, he's not from India or Nepal, for example. And so I can relate to him in that sense as another foreigner who came to the tradition, but he really is deep in his understanding. And similarly, kind of like what you were talking about earlier with this conversation, there are these things in life where the universe just makes it happen for you. And a little less than a year ago, without really expecting it, God just picked me up and placed me on the earth-based healing path, which is, I have a teacher who's from, and again, there's so many, how it all happened. It's really beautiful, but I connected with a teacher who lives very high up in the mountains of Peru, where they've preserved the medicine tradition, the healing traditions of the Inca people. And a lot of people think that, the Incas were around and the Spanish colonizers came and they destroyed the Inca tradition and the magic and all that. But these people actually escaped into the mountains to protect their wisdom and to protect their healing magic. So what ended up happening is my life is like all of these kind of different traditions and all these explorations, if you will, eventually brought me to where I am, where I'm very focused in these two parts of me, Vedanta, which is a non-dual philosophy, and the Inca medicine tradition, which is a dual philosophy, and sort of exploring these seeming contradictions, and how actually they come together very beautifully and they play off each other. And that's kind of been my life, is all the complexity of what it is to be a human. And how these things that we say, like, oh, there's this and then there's that, and they're separate. I've actually learned that everything sort of blends. Science and spirituality are dancing together, and the non-dual and the dual are sort of dancing together. So that's where I am now. I'm a Vedanta student, and I work in the Inca medicine tradition as a healing practitioner.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I looked at. I wanted to at least have some, besides being too excited and thrilled about the fact that you will be in my program, I also wanted to have a little bit of research, at least of some sort. And I was looking at the Inca, and that's how I was, looking at Peru and Machu Picchu and everything. I did made a point of asking you this, if you would, because it's what you're seeking is seeking you kind of philosophy. Right? Perfect teacher. I remember asking that back in New York when I used to get. I had no practice of any form of meditation besides reading it. I think reading doesn't do it to people. I guess that which I realize slowly now. Would you be kind enough to, as a tribute to your teacher, Don Alejandro Apaza? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Tell us briefly about what Inca earth-based healing is and how, and tell us a little bit about your teacher, what he looks like and how you met him. And we can also, if you would like, you can also add your Vedanta teacher as well. And I didn't write his name, so I don't have it.
Sure.
Also to attribute to him as well.
Yeah. And that's something that I do. Thanks for reminding me that, because that's something that, in one sense, I don't like to. I like to respect people's privacy in some sense, but it's also very important to me to honor the people that are teaching me, to honor my elders, and to really pay homage and respect to the fact that perhaps a lot of your listeners, especially if they're in Nepal, most of them they're not as familiar with, with the Inca or with Peru or with
Sure.
energy healing or any of these kind of things. And of course, I wasn't at one point in my life either. But yeah, it's important for me. I'm also a foreigner in this tradition, right? I'm a guest, and I've been welcomed beautifully into this tradition. And so I honor that. It's something that genuinely brings tears to my eyes often when I think of that, because it's such a beautiful thing for people to have needed to keep, these people were persecuted. They needed to keep their traditions secret in order to survive. And now they're opening it up a little bit, and they've allowed me to come and be a part of that. So it's beautiful. And yes, I want to honor my teachers. Maestro Don Alejandro Apasa, he is about 60 years old. He's a beautiful man. He's very simple. He's very funny, and he's very embodied in his teachings. He walks the walk, you can say, instead of just talking the talk. And he has, it's part of their prophecy that we are living right now through a time of great change, where we've been in a period of a lot of darkness in a lot of ways that started about 500 years ago. And we're entering a new time where there's going to be a lot of difficulty and transformation. And we know that transformation is often difficult and challenging, to make new challenges in your life, or new changes in your life, is challenging. And I think we can see, looking at the world, that there's a lot going on right now, and there's a lot of sort of difficult, heavy energy. And I think that difficult, heavy energy usually is what happens right before a breakthrough, right before there's beautiful new times. So they believe that a new earth is being built, is being created by all of us, and we will be entering a golden era at some point. But it takes all of us all over the world coming together in spirituality and mindfulness, and sort of being intentional about how we're connecting with each other and the world that we want to create. So as part of this prophecy, my teacher, Don Alejandro, started the Inca Medicine School, it's called, and you can go and check it out. And I ask you, if you are going to reach out to them in any sense, it should just be something that's not really like, oh, I'm curious about that. Something that you should really sit down and ask yourself. And this is a life-based path, and it's something important to be honored. So, of course, I want us all to be curious. I want us all to explore, but also to take it seriously, in some sense. But absolutely, you can go to Inca Medicine School and search for them and learn a little bit more about what they do. And it just, about a year ago, someone introduced me to them. And it was one of those things where, like, whoa, this is exactly where I need to be. It was a feeling, right, that this is my next stage. And the next stage in my journey is less intellectualizing about philosophy and arguing about, what's the true nature of reality and such, and really just getting to walking on the earth in a beautiful way, being in right relationship with my brothers and sisters all over the world. And some of those brothers and sisters are plants and animals and stones and trees. And some of those brothers and sisters are humans, and perhaps some of those brothers and sisters are beings that we haven't even contacted yet. But for me, the idea is about really learning to walk with peace, with humility, and with respect. So that's what I've been learning from Don Alejandro, and he's guiding me on my path as a healing practitioner. And I work with clients as well. I've been doing that for a few years now, helping them with all sorts of issues that I've also experienced in my life. Things like anxiety and depression, addiction, or even those feelings of just disconnect or a lack of purpose. It's something that is a great blessing in my life, to be able to share what I've learned with others and sort of not tell them what to do, but to apply some healing techniques, as well as to guide them towards a more true version of themselves, right? Not to try to make them like me and give them what worked for me, but to help people really get in touch with who they are, so that we're all expressing our individual uniqueness, right? The beauty of individuality. And so, yeah, that's my work in the earth-based tradition. It's a lot of being out in nature. It's a lot of putting my bare feet on the earth and connecting, and visiting sacred sites all over the world, a lot of ceremony, a lot of prayer, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Thank you.
Sure.
Um, would you be also since this episode, this whole podcast is a humble effort to try to be honest,
Yeah.
at least from my part, and hopefully share about happiness, because also my story as a small kid from some small town, Nepal already small place,
Mm-hmm.
that which I realized, I mean, it's a beautiful country, but which I realized when I was abroad, because so many times people won't even know the name.
Mm.
And there were times where when I was offended, and later on I understood, okay, there are so many countries in the world. It's understandable, right? Um, what I was trying to say was, yes, when trying to relate what we, because I was trying to relate my own story as a person from a small place of Nepal. I was somehow chasing happiness
Mm.
in my mind, I guess, chasing, and that happiness was in a distant land, and that distant land was the land of freedom, right?
Right.
The, the United States of America, and I was there for so many years, and I thought it's success, or maybe I don't know. I don't know what I maybe thinking. Uh, there was so as I get older, I see true happiness. It's something like a myth sometimes. It's very hard to find, and then we struggle with our anxiety and depression. And when I could get a hold of myself, and when I thought I was a little better than before in terms of my inner turmoil
Mm-hmm.
and how I was feeling, I thought it's very important to share this experience.
Yeah.
We don't have to be perfect, right? And you, I believe you already do the healing things. You are already in the spirituality, and with the conversation we had, I had with you last time, and you just also mentioned you also had some history of anxiety and depression and addiction. Would you be able to take us, let us, what was anxiety for you and how you developed it? Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes. There's so much to unpack there. So you might have to cut me off, or I'll try to cut myself off if I get too deep into it, because this is something that I could really go on for days. um, but there's a couple of things I want to point out, and one of them almost is, I want to start by correcting you, actually, Sandeep. I want to change the question from what was anxiety like for you to what is anxiety like for you. And I think
Okay.
that's an important shift for a lot of reasons. And it actually ties into our discussions of teachers. Um, so hang on, this might sound a little bit like I'm going in different directions, but hopefully I'll be
No,
able
no,
to bring it together in a way that makes
not at
sense.
all. I mean, we can go into any directions as well.
Good.
I mean,
So
yes,
I
please.
can bring it together, hopefully successfully. I want to point out on the teacher path, first of all. I spent a long time in my life thinking I need a teacher, not necessarily out and actively looking for teachers, but having this idea in my mind that the right teacher is gonna be an answer for me. It's gonna point me in the right direction somehow. And when I stopped looking for teachers is when they appeared. And when they appeared, they looked nothing like the way I expected them to look. They were not wearing orange flowing robes, for example. They weren't wearing the saffron. They were wearing regular Western street clothes, and they weren't presenting themselves a certain way to try to look enlightened, for example. They weren't doing that classic way of guru speech where they speak very slowly and they leave a lot of spaces in between their sentences for you to kind of fill in the gaps without knowing. There's a subconscious thing that a lot of the gurus, and I'm putting that in quotes right now for anyone who listens, the gurus, because there's a lot of folks out there who are presenting themselves to the way. And so I've discovered that those, in my humble opinion, are not the true teachers. The true teachers are, they get angry sometimes. They get sad sometimes. They are embodied humans. They are living a human life. They're not focused on transcending reality all the time and breaking free of Maya all the time, right? It's about understanding that in some sense we're living in a form of an illusion and a system that makes us live a certain way. And we can transcend that in one way in our mind. And in another way, we're humans, right? We're spiritual beings having a human experience. If we weren't meant to come to Earth and feel angry sometime, have people cut us off in traffic and get in front of us, have people piss us off sometimes, right? That's part of the journey. That's where a lot of the learning happens. So bringing that back to your question, I see myself as someone who's come a long way with my struggles. And my struggles probably started, I'm 34 years old right now. They probably started around 16 or so. That's when I first started to deal with depression. And my depression got so severe that at numerous times in my life, I was quite sure I was going to kill myself. And I even had a plan for many years of my life that I would wait until a little bit older, perhaps until my parents had passed, so I wouldn't make them sad. And I often said around 40 years old, I'm going to commit suicide because I was that depressed, because life was that difficult for me. And life was difficult for me more so because of my beliefs about the world and my perception of what was happening and my of coping with the world. I didn't know how to relate to the world as a complex person that I am, as a deep thinker and a deep feeler that I am. It took me a long time to realize that I'm a highly sensitive person, and I'm aware of all these tiny things about the world that are kind of not right in some way, all the suffering of the world. And it always really bothered me in a sense that I just didn't know how to relate to the world, and I didn't belong here, and this world was crazy, and everybody's kind of mean, and I just feel like a nice, peaceful guy in a place where everybody's yelling at each other and fighting to get ahead and focused on money, the things that weren't important to me. And so I created separation between myself and the world in a lot of ways, right? I don't belong here. I can't wait to get out. And my depression eventually turned into anxiety as well. It turned into sickness as well. And I spent a lot of time truly feeling like this life was not for me. And coming to the present time, I've learned so many outside techniques, you could say, practices like meditation, which really has brought me to a deeper understanding and acceptance of myself. And I love that word, acceptance. Not saying, oh yeah, life is shit and I accept it. No, but learning how to truly accept who you are and explore who you are. And a lot of the times that means turning off the noise of the world. Meditation is one of the ways that I do that. I have a lot of ways that I turn off the noise of the world so that I can hear that inner voice of mine speak. But yes, over the years, I saw a lot of different doctors. I saw a lot of different healers. I saw people in the Western medical tradition, standard doctors and psychotherapists. I started to explore alternative things like spirituality and study that and even seek some teachers here and there. And a lot of these things helped. They truly did. They brought me to a place where I was able to cope with the world better, to experience a greater level of peace. But there was still a lot of externalization, sort of looking outside of myself, like you said. What you seek is seeking you, that it took me a while to realize that all the happiness that I have in me, all the love that I have in me, and even all the anger, even all the sadness, it's all in me. It's all internal. Even when I talk to you, I'm able to recognize that in a dual sense, there's you and there's me. There's self and there's other. And there's also this part of me that has a deeper wisdom in knowing that, recognizing that I'm truly talking to myself right now, that you and I are reflections of one another, and that we are both God. We are both consciousness. I see only God here. And so that's, you know, all of my struggles have brought me to this place where I believe honesty and integrity and authenticity is the true key to the gates of heaven. Really just being who we are in a world that wants so badly for us to try to be other people, right? You know, when I was young, different from my older brother, and I wish I was more like him, you know, because I respected the way he was in certain ways. And coming more into who I am and sort of just allowing myself to explore it. That's why I corrected you and I say, what is anxiety for you? I won't anxiety every day. Absolutely not. I've really come a long way, and I feel peace and I feel bliss. But I'm now not trying to make myself a peaceful person. I'm not trying to separate myself from anxiety or depression or sad moments, moments of self-doubt, for example. My new approach to life is to welcome it all in. I'm bringing it all in. I want to hug the entire universe. I want to bring it all in. And that means I want to hug the anxiety. I want to welcome that. That's part of the human experience. I want to welcome the sadness. I want to welcome those days where I wake up and I'm like, I'm just kind of in a funk today. I don't feel that, you know, I don't feel that inspired or positive or happy. And I want to sit with that. I close my eyes and I meditate with it. And I just say, this is how I feel today. And I don't follow it up with, oh, I wish I felt differently, right? On those days where I feel a little bit of anxiety in the morning, I just sit down, I close my eyes, I say, I feel anxious today. I feel that energy. I feel the energy of anxiety, which to me is just simply energy that wants to move. There's something that wants to move in me today. And sometimes I say that, and sometimes I start to cry. And that might be interesting for people to hear, like, oh my God, this guy's crying all the time. I'm more in touch with my emotions these days. I'm more in touch with the anger that is part of being a human. I get angry sometimes. Doesn't mean I have to scream and yell, right? Doesn't mean I have to express my anger through violence, either towards others or towards myself. But I'm being inclusive. I'm bringing it all in. I'm welcoming all this human experience. And I find that when I do that, it's like, rather than trying to be a dam and block the flow of the water, I let the water flow through me. You know what I mean? I just let life flow through me. And as life flows through me, I realize, wow, this is power. This is what power is. You know what I mean? To just be this channel where everything's coming through, moving out. And so, yeah, again, I might have gone off on a couple of tangents there, but I hope that answers your question about what my journey has been like. Yes, I've struggled. Yes, I've come a long way. But I continue to be human, and I continue more and more every day to embrace what it means to be human. And I don't want to judge other people. I think there's a lot of people that are still stuck in that stage that I was for a long time, where they're trying to present themselves to the world and even to themselves, really trying to convince themselves that I'm peaceful all the time and everything's good and, you know, whatever it may be. And I know people who have spent time with the Dalai Lama. I know people who have spent time with some of these other high-profile spiritual teachers from different traditions. They laugh, they cry, they get irritable, they get angry, you know, they experience life. So it's not about closing yourself off from certain parts of what it means to be human. It's about just bringing a greater awareness and an understanding and having mindfulness about what it is to be alive. That's what it is for me.
I asked you because there are not so many people. Let me
Sure.
trace back. Tell you a little sort of story. I went to my dad's village when I came back to Nepal. It's still remote. You know, we had to cross a few mountains and rivers and get there. And then I saw my grandmother's brother. My grandmother had passed away a long time ago. He's like 94 years old, dude. He's like walking with a
Uh-huh.
stick, remote place, right? And I talked to him. He looked like not such a friendly guy at first. I was a little hesitant to
Uh-huh.
talk to him, but I talked to him just out of this thing I had because I was like, um, I was first from the United States, and I was valuing everybody, yeah, and especially my grandmother's brother, 94, and he's so
Uh-huh.
chill, you know. It appeared to me that he doesn't know any goddamn thing about anxiety in his
Right.
whole life, and he's not even trying,
Yeah.
you know, and he's just like telling me some stories. Um, for some people, and especially I see in Nepal, um, sometimes I think maybe people have other issues here. Maybe uh, they are focused on maybe their financial independence, things like that, and this anxiety, this kind of thing. I don't hear it
Right.
often, uh, but uh, but it's not a fact though. I'm sure there are people who are suffering
Sure,
from it,
sure.
right? But it's not as much as I saw in New York City. Uh, and even in comments, I looked for ways. That's why I asked you what it was like for
Mm,
you, because you have been through and you help
right.
people. Some people, when I talk about anxiety and some of the things, I think I asked this question for my listeners' perspective. Some people don't know if they are experiencing what I'm experiencing or what you have
Mm-hmm.
experienced,
Yeah.
right? Um, so that they could see there's a light at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
tunnel. There is hope. Um, so um, if anybody's listening right now who is going through maybe anxiety, and that's really bothering him or her, or even some depression, what could he or she do without having that knowledge that you have gained over this 15, 20 years you have been in
Mm-hmm.
this journey? But there might be something who's new to whole of this
Yeah.
thing, right? The people even don't know spirituality, and that was another question I wanted to ask you. Like, what is spirituality? Should it be a hobby? Should it be life purpose? Should it dictate
Yeah.
life? I have conversation with some of my brothers, my cousins here. He said, I mean, this is not the path you take, Sandeep. That's what
Uh-huh.
he tells me. Take after 50, you become a passive
Okay.
guy. The fame and success is, you know, when you become spiritual. That's there's also that kind of
Mm-hmm.
misunderstanding, or understanding. I don't know. So, can you integrate these two questions and maybe tell us a little bit about what spirituality is for you, and what can listeners do if they're experiencing anxiety or those kind of issues, like they could do right after that?
Mm.
What could help you from your
Sure.
point of view?
Yeah. In my experience, and some of my intuition tells me that a lot of what you said is true, that um, there are certain pathologies, let's call them, certain sicknesses, certain, I like that word, when they break up the word disease and they call it dis-ease, meaning you're not at ease, you're not at peace. So I like using that
Correct.
sort of expression of what it means to be sick. um, and I think there are certain dis-eases that are very cultural, that are very based on certain systems. And one, so in that sense, I can recognize that. I imagine, like you said, there's a lot more folks that are living in, let's call it the United States and the UK and some of these places that might have more anxiety, maybe even more depression than a place like Nepal. And I believe that a lot of it is based on our ways of living. Actually, I believe everything is based on both our beliefs and our ways of living, what we're doing in a day, really, what our habits and our hobbies look like. So I can understand um, that, yeah, here in the United States, there's a lot of, and I also think that our culture has really expanded across the world, and a lot of cultures have changed dramatically. I'm sure you can recognize that even in Nepal, 50 years ago, they probably had a lot less anxiety than now, because I think a lot more Nepali people now are sort of following the Western cultural model, which is like, yeah, get the money, get the car, get the beautiful girlfriend, you know, work, work, work. You know what I mean? You got to keep going. You got to
And
keep hustling.
I want to correct really quickly for my listeners. I don't want to talk for some of my listeners who might be in Nepal. I don't want to talk on behalf of all Nepalese.
Yeah,
I don't know the data, by the way. You know, it could be
sure.
my ignorance as well. So, yes, please.
Yeah. Yeah, I admit, of course, you know more of the data than me, and I don't know any, but
But I
these are
feel
just sort
that
of
way.
guesses. I've seen it too. You know, I lived in Egypt, for example, for 7 years, and I saw how things they do are similar to the things that we do, and how they have similar struggles. I really believe that the culture and the systems that we live in create a lot of stress sometimes. So you were asking me about, you know, what people can do if they're experiencing anxiety. First of all, for people that maybe don't even know, anxiety can take a lot of different forms, almost infinite forms. And again, for me, anxiety is this like energy that wants to move, but it's stuck. So anxiety can take the form of overthinking, can take a form of feeling like you spend so much time kind of, for example, you have a hard time making decisions. You constantly think about, is this the right decision? You're comparing this. That's one form of anxiety. Or what they call, sometimes they call it FOMO, the fear of missing out. When you're like, you're not able to choose this, you're not able to choose A because you're terrified that choosing A means I can't have B, right? And so you spend all this time in this in-between phase, and you never move forward in your life. In some sense, that's anxiety. You know, having difficulty falling asleep at night could be anxiety. There's also physical symptoms of anxiety, like shortness of breath, or like your chest feels heavy. You know, that could be anxiety. Um, and that could go on and on. You know, there's a lot of different ways that it can manifest in our lives, but I think self-doubt is a pretty common one. You know, like, I just don't feel that I'm capable, or I just don't feel that I'm good enough or ready. You know, there's some idea that I'm not ready yet, and I'm sure you've experienced that even with your podcast. Maybe it took you a little time in between the first idea of I want to start a podcast and then the day where you actually started it. I'm sure in between there was a lot of like,
Yep.
oh my God, but I'm not ready. Who am I to start a podcast, right? All that kind of stuff. So those are some of the ways that anxiety can happen in our life, and how to deal with it. Again, we're talking about a process. We're talking about a journey here. We're talking about like being willing to sort of explore and find out what works for us. But what I will say, as someone who, you know, you talked about mindfulness, and we connected on that, right? We connected on a few things. We also connected on alcohol, and how we both used to struggle with alcohol.
Sure.
I think that, and this is going to tie into the other question. For me, I think the important thing is finding ways to minimize the external noise, which is guaranteed in our lives. You know, that we're constantly listening to the radio, watching television, hearing other people's voices. We go to work, everybody's talking at us, blah, 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 you know. One of the most important things is to just set aside a little bit of time to be with ourselves, to learn more about ourselves in a curious way. And I think we're very used to judging ourselves. Like, oh my gosh, I'm this way and I shouldn't be. You know, like, get those words should and shouldn't out of your dictionary. Just get those out of there, and just there's no should or shouldn't in life, right? There's just what is, and sort of exploring what is. So one of the most powerful things I would say is to meditate. And
Yeah.
there's different types of meditation. I have tried a few and eventually come to mindfulness meditation, which means I sit down, I close my eyes, I set a timer, and that's all I do. And all sorts of thoughts are going to come up, and some of them are, maybe a couple of them are positive, but a lot of them are kind of negative, and they're like, oh, you should be doing this, and like, oh, you know, all that. And I just let it happen. I just watch it. You know, just kind of watch the thoughts go by like they're little boats in a stream of water, and they're just going by. And a lot of people are like really resistant to start meditating, and that's good. When you find that there's resistance to start something, that that's the signal that you need to do it. There's a
Yeah.
there's a Zen Buddhist quote, like a proverb where someone said, you should meditate for 20 minutes a day. Unless you don't have time, then you should meditate for an hour. And the idea is, if you really have that resistance, if you really feel like, oh, I can't do that, that's impossible, then that means you really need it. So I don't want to
Sure.
say anyone needs meditation, and I don't want to say 20 minutes a day either, but I will say it's very important, if you have a choice between doing something like meditation for an hour, one time per week, or 5 minutes every day of the week, then I would say you should probably do it 5 minutes every day. I believe in simplicity and consistency. So that's one way that I would guide listeners. Anybody who's feeling this is just to start exploring with curiosity. Sit down, set a timer for 5 minutes. I know that you have resistance to do it, but that doesn't mean that you can't. Doesn't mean you can't act despite the resistance. And let's be honest, I don't care how busy you are, you got 5 minutes. You can do this. And it will grow, right? Eventually it gets a little bit easier. And not only does it get easier, but it gets exciting. Some beautiful things start to happen in meditation, some wild visions, almost like you're on crazy drugs. Sometimes you get these visions and these ideas or these inspirations. So, again, there's so many different things that can be done, and there's lots of different ways to explore what works best for us. And that's something but universally, I tell people to sit down and meditate for 5 minutes a day. Start there, start small. In a world that wants you to start big and always do everything big, start small, start easy. That's one way to deal with it. And along those lines, I would also just say, find more ways to, when you can, if you can, to turn off the outside noise. For me, that means I don't spend time on social media. Instagram is the only one that I use because I like it. And I'm very intentional about how I use it, when I use it, who I'm following and why. I follow accounts that are, they call it a feed for a reason. They call your Instagram feed, right? Or your time. It's feeding you. So, they say you are what you eat. So I ask people to just sort of pay attention to what you're accepting. If you're sitting around watching the news all day, you'll find that the news is just always negative. They don't tell you beautiful things that are happening around the world. They tell you about this person killed this person, and there's a bank robbery here. And, there's a lot of like this stuff that is designed to create certain types of feelings in us. And they're not really healthy, peaceful feelings. So those are the two big things. I encourage people to turn off the phone when they can. I know we need it for work and things like that, but my phone is in airplane mode a lot of the time. Most of the phone is in airplane mode, and I take it out when I want to use it. And the messages will be there waiting for me. I don't need to go and check it every 3 seconds. And that's another form of anxiety, feeling like you want to check your phone all the time, or do this, do that. I gotta check my email, gotta do that. So if possible, and again, I'm no guru, but if possible, those are the things that have worked best for me and for a lot of my clients as like a simple place to start. We can all bring a little bit more mindfulness to our day-to-day activities, and that is spirituality. Spirituality can be a hobby. It can be someday you wake up and you put a mala around your neck and you call yourself spiritual and you start doing spiritual things or acting a spiritual way, whatever that means. But for me, true spirituality is being mindful and intentional about my actions. I can be mindful and intentional about eating a donut or a salad. Neither one is wrong or right. It's not like the donut's terrible because it's a donut. It's just, are you bringing mindfulness? Are you intentional about what you're doing? Or are you living kind of programmed and automatic? Most of us are. And so if we can explore that with curiosity rather than judgment, we can bring ourselves out of that and just live life day to day, paying attention to what we're doing, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is profound.
Sure.
We are, dear listeners, we are towards our end of our podcast, but I wanna asking few important questions. Short. Uh, I remember when I got into your Instagram as a follower. I have that's in my to read book list. You have posted somewhere. You have like almost 5,000 posts. So in one of the posts, you have asked the your followers their favorite book, and you have wrote your favorite book.
Oh, okay.
And I it's just somewhere, and that's the beginning of following you. Like my Instagram saw it, and I was like, and I looked for the book. I couldn't find it, but some excerpts I found it in the internet as well. But I really wanted to dig into that. Could be your favorite book, but there might be another other favorite books. Can you which can you tell us one of your favorite books?
Yeah. Ooh, that's a tough one. I think I remember the post you're talking about. Yes, I do.
The I think it's a writer author. I think it's female author. I believe.
Yeah.
But yeah. Or and again, that's I was giving a little prequel perhaps to how other prequel to some of your posts as your fan. But what are you reading nowadays? Any book you recommend to some of
Yeah.
me, my listeners?
That's great. What am I reading nowadays? So I'm often reading. It's funny because I talk so much about simplicity, but I'm usually reading lately 2 books at a time. Before bed, I read fiction. I only read fiction stories. And I think that's a great way to, I don't think it's so helpful to read like self-development and things like that right before bed. So I like to just read nice stories. I'm actually reading a story right now that I read when I was a child. And it's a series of books about animals that are doing human things, if that makes sense. So like it's a book about like mice and rabbits and all these that live in a castle somewhere, and there's some evil rats that come and try to take over the castle, and they have a war and they have to protect their peaceful castle and things like that. So that's fun. I like reading fun books in the evening before bed, and just stories that are just entertaining, right? Just for entertainment and sort of to expand the creative part of my brain. Day to day, during the day, I'm reading a lot of books. Most of my books are kind of about the traditions that I'm working in. So I actually read a lot of books, or about Sanatan Dharma and different teachers. I also read, most recently, I read a book called Awakening Intuition. I also read a book called Buffalo Woman Comes Singing by Brooke Medicine Eagle, and that's about a woman who is half white, half Native American, and it's her sharing her journeys in the Native American medicine traditions. So those are a couple that come to mind. I actually just spent a couple of weeks in the woods and turned off all my screens and everything, and so I was just reading. I read about 5 books up there. Wow. And so those are some of the books that I read most recently. And yeah, I kind of anything that's inspiring to me.
Have you come across this book called Letting Go, The Art of Surrender by David R. Hawkins? Or
who is it Hawkins.
By? He's a PhD. Hawkins, I believe. SAWK. It is. I mean, I can Google search really quickly.
I think I've come across that book. I've read a book recently called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer, and it sounds familiar.
Okay.
But The Art of Letting Go.
The Letting Go, The Pathway of Surrender by
David R. Hawkins. Yeah, I've seen the book.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it now. I've seen the book, but I haven't read it. Have you?
I mean, the thing is, it feels almost wrong to download the book in Nepal. Like it's possible, but we don't have this. It's tough to. It's not as easy to get online books in Nepal. Okay. We recently passed a law of accepting international cards for online thing.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these books, like specific books, is so hard to get in bookstore. I was looking at it at bookstore, but I might have read like a few pages already, and it's meditation, and then he has a science background.
Right.
And one thing I wanted to add when you were talking about meditation was my personal experience with meditation. I thought it would be all rose and imagination and all beautiful things, but I had to face myself. And after 1.5 years, there's always a point in my meditation where I freaked out, and I hide it that for with almost everybody. I don't know, like my brother got me into meditation, and recently it's been like few months, I guess 8 months ago. After an episode, I realized what am I scared of? And when I faced it, that was the opening up the drainage, as you said, the dam, the water. This was the anxiety. And even so, some of the listeners could get into meditation expecting good results, but that's a process, right, Nicholas? It's a process. People they're gonna experience, they'll see the feelings, and they need to be there and watch the energy flow, right?
For the sake of honesty, I think we have to let your listeners know, and let anybody who's interested in meditation know, that you are going to face a lot of resistance. It's going to be a challenge. It's not something where not, we see the pictures of people meditating and they're, but that's either a lie or those people have been really at it for a while. And even people who have been at it for years and years and years, they have those, I've been meditating for years. And I have those meditations where I had, last week I went to community meditation and, in a group of people, and the tears were just flowing, beautiful tears, blissful tears. It's something you can't describe. It's ineffable, but you just feel the bliss of what it is to be a human in all its complexity, with all the ups and downs. And that was great. The next day I sat down and meditated, and the whole time I was like, I can't focus, and all those kind of resistances. My mind is crazy and it won't shut up. And so again,
I liked your post today too, with the thoughts, positive and negative.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, positive thoughts, and then like, yes, both are thoughts.
Yeah.
I mean, right? I'm talking something about Nicholas' Instagram post, so excuse my listeners here, but okay. Yes, so the pathway of surrender, I found that book, and I thought it spoke because it was not just meditation. Since he has a science background, I think a lot of people could also relate, and I recommend it to some people. And what I learned from my practice, I'm a novice, I'm a beginner, but
we all are.
It connected with me on many levels. So
that's a great one, and along those lines, because it sounds similar, I would point people in the direction of it's a popular book that came out in the last few years. It's called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer.
Thank you.
And the reason I bring that up is not only because it sounds similar to what you're talking about, that, the art of letting go and surrendering, it sounds very similar. But Michael Singer, the guy who wrote The Surrender Experiment, is a former computer engineer who made tons and tons of money building up this computer software company and eventually selling it and having so much success in that world, and sort of discovering spirituality, again, that strange word, you can't really describe it, sort of discovering that there was more than just the material world and financial success, and sort of his exploration where now he owns like a retreat center in the middle of the woods somewhere down in Florida, and he's considered a very successful spiritual teacher. And so for people that are sort of interested in, again, like where science and spirituality are actually not separate, and how they can, we can learn from both together, that might be an interesting book for some of your listeners to read.
I like to say that to myself. I'm the audience of my own. Of my own show. Some of the questions, I ask for myself as well, and I think my listeners would also benefit from it. Some like genuine like curious question that I had
Uh-huh.
personally. I'm gonna let you go with this final one. It's the tradition of the program, the episode. Um, um, can you this is the last final piece of question. One thing you tell our young listeners to get into right away, and one thing they should get out of as soon as possible. If you could end that question with sharing a one line of your favorite memory from your childhood.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay. One thing that, again, and not to correct you, but I have to correct myself multiple times a day when I find myself using the word should or shouldn't, or when I find myself using the words good or bad or things like that. So please don't take it personal. It's something I do all the time. I'm
sure,
conscious about language more and more, and I see all the ways that I use it in ways that are maybe not so helpful. So I
sure,
won't encourage your listeners that they should or shouldn't do anything. I would encourage people that um, they're probably fighting themselves and blocking peace and happiness if they're looking to other people or towards experiences or towards certain material successes as the answer to their internal problems. Just like you said, you had this idea at some point in your life that if I go to the United States, I'm going to be happy. If I get this job, you worked as a sommelier, which is super cool, by the way. But you might have had this idea that, sommelier, that's glamorous, it's exciting, and that's what's going to make me, whatever. Oh, the perfect partner. Just this beautiful woman or this handsome, everything's going to be perfect. So I encourage people to explore more and more that anything that we create in our life that brings us joy or brings us peace, it's just a reflection of the infinite joy and peace that is in us, that it's all really inside. So like you said, facing, and again, what they should do, what's a helpful activity for people is attached to that, is to find more ways to go inward, to find more ways to appreciate the outside world. Wow, I have desires. There is a car that really is exciting to me. I'd love to own that car one day. And it's not because I think it's going to make me look cool and it's going to make me get some hot babe because she likes my car. Own that car because I'm a car lover. That's one of the ways that I'm unique. That's one of the things about me that is special. And so I could put that on my wish list and strive to it, but not because I think it's going to make me blank, happy or peaceful or successful, whatever it is. So that's how those two things tie into each other is less externalization, less seeking, and less tomorrow's the day, and more inward looking. And how can I be happy and peaceful right now? Even if I'm angry, even if I'm sad, is there something I can be grateful for right now? I can tell you, even if I was sad or anxious or anything like that right now, there's this noise in the back. I don't know if you can hear it. I'm hoping the microphone is not good enough because they're chopping up trees in one of the neighbors' yards and it's making all sorts of noise. One of those big machines where they feed the trees in. So that's something that's irritating me right now. I wish it was quieter right now during this podcast recording. But how can I find peace right now within myself? I can be grateful for this beautiful, wonderful conversation that I'm having with you, right? How can I go inward right now and find that there's something to be grateful for? And I'll connect that to the next question you asked me. You asked me about a memory from my childhood. And that's something I can always be
yeah,
grateful for. I can always remember things and think, wow, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for a lot of my childhood memories, but my favorite one, we used to play this game. When we were young, everybody wasn't sitting on their phones all the time. We were outside and we were playing and we were being children. And it's a beautiful, nostalgic time for me. And so my memory is being out with friends that lived on the same street as me. We'd all get together in the summer evenings and the autumn evenings, and we'd play a game like hide and seek, where one person would close their eyes, everyone else would go hide, and then that person would go after them. And your job was to run to this tree and touch it before that person could catch you. So they'd be sneaking around and you'd be hiding somewhere and they'd be looking for you. And when you saw your opportunity, when you saw that they were looking the other way or they were far enough away from you, you would just go as fast as you can and you'd run and you'd get to the tree. And if you got to the tree, you'd yell, "I'm home free, I'm safe." And you'd win the game, so to speak. So I remember, it's probably my favorite memory from childhood is those memories of being a kid, being outside under the stars with my friends and sort of feeling like this was always going to be what life is like. It's always just going to be me and my friends having fun and laughing outside under the stars. And of course, as an adult, life hasn't been all like that, right? Life has been this series of ups and downs. And I've had periods of my life where I've made a lot of money and been quite successful in that area. And I've had other areas where I wasn't making as much money, but I felt really successful and peaceful inside in other parts of my life. So life hasn't always been laughing with my friends under the stars like I was a kid. But it's a beautiful memory for me, and I can always go back to that memory and be grateful. And I thank you for asking me that question, because it allows me to feel that feeling of when I was a kid. I'm genuinely very emotional right now, remembering that the beauty of those moments. So thank you for that opportunity.
Definitely, we're trying to end with a
Yeah.
happy note. Again, feelings come and go. Everything is
Right.
impermanent. You know better than anybody else. Thank you. We're past the time you assigned for the episode. Where can our guests find you? Can they follow you
Yeah,
on Instagram?
so I do have lots of followers from Nepal, actually. I've noticed, yeah, when I look
Yeah.
at the analytics, I have quite a few from India, but as well from Nepal. And so anyone can follow me on Instagram. My page is at the wave and the ocean. And I'm very active on there. I usually try to respond to my comments in a timely fashion, so someone can just come along and follow, and that's all, or they can send me a message and say hello, and I'll get to it within a few days. And I also have a website, waveandocean.com. I have a free meditation guide on there, and I'll be offering more free things there soon. And I also have some information about me and my path, and also the healing services that I provide. So I encourage anybody to just stop by and say hello.
I'm gonna leave the link on my podcast and when I upload it in YouTube.
Awesome,
as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
so
you,
much.
brother. Appreciate it.
This has been my honor and
Mine
privilege.
too.
Thank you for sharing, and we could have gone forever, but we all have things to
Sure.
do. And once again, sir, my sincere gratitude for speaking with us.
Same to you. I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Sure. Bye-bye, my dear listeners. We'll see you another